Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Green Tea Podcast. All right. Today's episode is all about the Cancer season. Hello, Cancer babies and birthdays, or if you have any Cancer placements in your chart. So, Emma, go ahead and tell us the main core themes of Cancers.
Yeah, definitely. So happy birthday to everyone who's a Cancer or anyone who knows a Cancer. Cancer season this year runs from June 20th until July 22nd. And Cancer is a cardinal water sign. Some core themes that you'll find with Cancer energy are things like emotional memory, sensitivity, the instinct to protect anything that feels like home or that feels comfortable to Cancer or that they value. This could be literally their home, but this could also be their children. This could be their friends. This could be a work of art that they've created. They will protect and defend it like their life depends on it. They're also strong nurturers, and this can be in a really obvious way, like nurturing another person, or it can just be like nurturing memories of the past or unspoken feelings or things like that. You know, they have a strong penchant for nostalgia. That's sort of that part of Cancer. Cancer also rules the fourth house of family, ancestry, roots. So familial patterns, ancestral patterns are also the domain of Cancer, as well as any type of maybe attachment or emotional dependence on others. I meant to say attachment to the past or to others or to something that can sometimes, I don't want to say create a barrier to progress and moving forward, but at times could potentially do that. And I would say, yeah, like emotional intelligence is another quality of Cancer. Like I said, very watery. And just for anybody who needs the clarification, water represents emotions in astrology.
Wow. I remember you told me that specifically now the water sign, especially Cancers, you'll see a lot of Cancer men in the military, which was so interesting. Could you dive into about that?
Sure. Yeah. So when I had been learning about astrology, that was one of the things that the teacher that I had been learning from was talking about. If you think about it, it makes sense because, like I said, the first thing that I mentioned with Cancer is that it's a protector of whatever feels like home to it. And very literally, if you think about the military, these are people who are going to war, sort of, or doing something. Where they are defending and protecting their homeland. In this case, home represents like their country.
Are you
But
saying like
yeah, that's what I was.
specifically you see a lot of Cancer signs in the men that are actually in the military, or the military is just a Cancer energy, or
I
both?
think, well, so I think in general, the energy of the military could definitely just be Cancerian in general. But she had told me that she actually does see like a lot of Cancer people in the
Mm.
military. I had like asked her about it, I think, another time too. And yeah, but I'm glad that you brought that up because it is, of course, worth noting on every episode that you can be in the military without being a Cancer, and vice versa. But yeah, at the very least, the military in general definitely, I think, can carry an energy of Cancer. Yeah,
Mm, okay, got it.
yeah.
So honestly, Emma, I was telling Emma before we started this episode, I personally love all signs. I love all people, just like I love all animals. But there's just that one or two signs that you personally might not get along with. For
Mm,
example, for me, I've had tough times with water signs, specifically Cancers, and maybe that's just my own karma. I don't
mm,
know, but because I don't have a lot of water placements in my chart, it's hard
mm,
for me to relate to water signs.
mm.
So, Emma, could you give us the positive things about the Cancers? Because I have Cancer friends. And the main thing about them is that they're very motherly. They're very
Mhm.
emotional in a very like loving way. So hype
Yeah,
up the Cancers for us.
yeah, totally. Let's talk about it. So, um, it's funny. I want to start this off by saying that it's funny that you say that because for me, I think I get along with Cancers, but I think there have been windows of time where I have struggled to understand them. And a
Mm,
lot of that occurred during times when I was learning to understand my own emotions on a more kind of like deep level and how to nurture myself instead of like maybe nurturing others instead of focusing on that on myself. But to get more into like the empowered expression of Cancer and like all the great things that they have to offer because they do have many. Um, in their empowered expression, like I said, Cancer is a very protective sign, but obviously sometimes that can become and can feel a little bit controlling or, yeah, I guess controlling. But in their most empowered expression, they are the types of people who know how to be protective and emotionally supportive, but without being controlling, or without being, I don't want to say suffocating, but without being like suffocating as well. They understand, that true protection is like, or care, sorry, for others happens only
Mm,
without self erasure. So they're not abandoning themselves in order to care for another person.
mm,
But they can be a very, kind of like their sign implies, like they can be people that feel like home, because of how comforting and nurturing they can be when they're in that more empowered expression. They also have the capacity to develop very high emotional intelligence, the ability to assess and understand the emotional energy that's present in a room or in a conversation or in a connection with somebody, and then act accordingly. They carry that ability, and so a lot of cancers, I notice, like they have a natural knack for it, which sometimes I do think can correlate with what you're saying about nurturance. When they perceive and they can sense, oh, this person needs healing, or this person needs comfort or support,
yeah.
they're quick to be like, oh yes, I can give that. So it's an amazing, amazing thing, when you need
Yeah.
someone in your corner. um, they also are really great at, like, I guess, I wrote it in the notes as transforming emotional memory into meaning, and I do
Mm,
think this to be very true. Emotional memory is exactly what it sounds like. It's like the memory that we have emotionally of like a time past. So this is where like nostalgia kind of plays into things. You know how like we all experience nostalgia and sort of like looking back at our past and being like, oh my gosh, oh, I just knocked my headphone out. Like, oh my gosh, this was so good. Like, I remember when when I was in a relationship with this person and everything
mm,
worked out so great. Um, they know how to take memories that they've had and tap into like the emotion that that memory holds, and then transform it into something, whether that is like wisdom, like a painful memory that they can convert into like wisdom to share, or a beautiful experience that they had and then convert that into art, or they put that love that they experienced into like the food that they make or the home that they decorate or something like that. um, so that's like another thing. But yeah, I guess like I could really go on and on and on forever, but a lot of the things that cancer has as strengths are of revolving around things like our emotions, emotional memory, nurturance, or like a sense of home and familiarity. They're
mm.
really, really, really like safety oriented people. And so in their highest expression, they understand that like safety and vulnerability can coexist. And the reason that I say that is because sometimes when we prioritize safety, we believe that being vulnerable then is not safe because it exposes you. But they understand the strength that having emotions gives you. And when you understand your emotions, they understand the value of that and how to balance that with like sharing, for example, or being open about that
Yeah.
stuff.
I
So
just
yeah.
can't imagine walking around the world with just so emotions with like
Mm,
cancers and water signs because of course there's good things, but I think emotions to me bring so much like unstableness and like
mhm,
pain and like up and downs, I guess,
mm,
because our emotions are always up and down depending on
mm,
how we feel throughout the day. So
mm,
it's so interesting to me to try and understand, especially cancers, which in my opinion, out of the three water signs, they're the most emotional,
mm,
which is not good or bad. I'm just
mhm.
saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I would maybe in the next, I think in my chart, my whatever is a Cancer, meaning I was a Cancer energy in my last life. So I'm glad I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so fun. I wanted to ask though, what is what is it? It could be that you already mentioned like the
Hmm.
emotional aspect, but what is it about your cancer friends or the cancer people that you know that you feel like you struggle to understand, or like you struggle to get along
Oh, I just did a big sigh because I'm
with?
about to go on. Just kidding. That's where I kind of get into disempowerment. Actually, I have one
Yeah.
Cancer friend. She's so motherly. This
Mm.
energy. She's like, you're invited to my home anytime. Like she makes you feel home. And I just
Yeah.
love that. But
Hmm.
then I also have mostly other Cancer people that I know a bit of a negative experience. And
Mm.
maybe it's in their disempowerment, or maybe it's just the fact that I don't get along. It's just not compatible with me.
Mm.
It's not that they're good or bad. Just
Sure.
like maybe to you, Geminis are not compatible with you. Same thing.
Right. Right.
I just found Cancer energy to be very there's one thing that you wrote here that I would really like to use. It says,
Yeah.
use nurturance as a currency. If I care for you enough, you'll stay, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where they feel like they do this and you owe them something,
Hmm.
where that they're so sensitive in everything you say. I might mention, hey, your hair looks odd today, and they'll take that into like very emotional.
Hmm.
Or maybe I'll mention some, like there was a cancer person that I dated. I
Hmm.
mentioned, like I did something that I didn't realize would offend him. Instead of being like, hey, this offended me, and then we talk about it and move on, he talks
Sure.
about it for years and how it deeply wounded him. And I was like, all I did was sit my friend next to you. Like we weren't dating. Like we're not even that close. What, who cares?
Hmm.
He just thought that like me sitting with my friend between us was like a huge thing for him. Like you made me
Hmm.
feel like this. And I'm like, is this like the end of the world to them? Like this one
Hmm.
little like thing that triggered them. So I just don't
Hmm.
understand that about them.
Got it.
So yeah, stuff like that. They're very sensitive to something that's not a big deal in my opinion.
I see. I see. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense based on like what
Yeah.
you're explaining. Um, yeah, and I do think it to be true if we kind of use this as a tail into the disempowered expression of cancer. Cancer has many, many great qualities, but one of the things that they can do is what you said. It's using nurturance as a currency. It's the idea of like, oh, I'm caring for you so that you'll stay here. And it's kind
Hmm.
of like no long it can start to feel transactional. It can start to feel like you said, like you owe them now something because they've given all this with an ulterior motive, you know?
Hmm.
Um, I definitely do see that in cancers. And a lot of times this can come from what I had mentioned before about cancer has a strong like attachment, you know, or like at times it could even be an emotional dependence on like another person. So that can lead to
Hmm.
a fear of abandonment. So they don't want to be left alone. They do well, you know, with other people or around other people that they feel cared for by as well. And so sometimes, if you know, if they're in relationships or they're in connections where, um, well, not if, but in connections, sometimes
Hmm.
they can engage in that behavior where they have this fear of abandonment. And so maybe their partner is maybe more taking more space or just not like always attached to them. And so they can perceive that as like a rejection or some type of like distance. And that means they're pulling away or da da da. And so they'll go on overdrive, like, oh, I got to make dinner for you and I got to do this and this and this. And they do all of this stuff that, sure, it's generous to do, but it's very important to understand the motivation behind it, right? Is it like, oh, I'm doing this because I feel inspired and I feel like giving and I feel like loving and I don't expect anything in return, and even if this person, you know, whatever, like I'm still happy to give this? Or is it like, oh god, like I'm afraid that he's going to leave, I'm afraid that whatever, so I got to make sure that every single day I'm home to make him dinner? It's like, well, that's more like a cage and a prison than it is a free flow of energy. um
And I would like to add that for, I don't know if you would agree, but with my
yeah.
experience with these kind of cancer energies, it's an exchange that can never be repaid back. In my
Hmm.
experience, it's like they do something nice for you, make dinner for you. Okay, I can do that for you, but for them, that's not a equal exchange. It's like you're
Oh.
forever mine to stay, and it's like I
Mm.
can never satisfy cancers. They will
Mm.
never leave you alone, and they're always like sensitive about everything. So it's never like something I can ever repay back with them. So
Mm.
that's the part that annoys me.
Oh, interesting. I've never had anybody say that before, so I
Yeah.
just think it's cool that you can articulate how it is that you perceive it. Like, yeah, I mean, I could see that too, because one thing that I was going to mention that I didn't, but it
Hmm.
fits here, is water signs in general, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. They have a desire to like merge with something greater than themselves. You know,
Hmm.
so much so to the point where like Cancer can almost experience like this merging of like energies and emotions, and kind of like you said, it can start to feel like one thing, like
Hmm.
this concept of I am giving you this and now you're mine forever. Or like, you know, there's a,
Hmm.
I don't want to say like a possessiveness because that falls more with like Taurus.
Hmm.
But there can be like an emotional, you know, type of like
Yeah.
hold on that. Scorpio can struggle with a little bit of that like enmeshment and what is classically considered, I guess, codependence. You know, where you kind of lose yourself in another person and like everything is dependent on them. And then Pisces is self sacrifice. It's giving so much to other people because you feel so deeply for them, or their specifically the struggles or the pain that they're having or experiencing, that you overgive and overgive and overgive and burn yourself out. You have no boundaries, and suddenly everything that you give is like, it's like you've erased yourself and now it's all about the other person. So you see what I mean? There's like a theme that is very present with water, where they can merge and mold with another person's energy in a way that that person might not have even asked for. You know what I mean? And vice versa. It happens in the other way as well. But yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
also realized that whenever you are arguing with a water sign, especially cancers, at least in my experience, it's a never ending argument because they
Mm,
can argue anything because you're arguing with emotion. So one plus
yes.
one, it doesn't equal two to them.
Yeah.
It equals whatever they want to feel at the moment.
Hmm.
So arguments also doesn't go well with cancers for me.
Hmm. Yeah. That's, you kind of hit it right on the head. I do think that, the rub there can be that, yeah, they are oftentimes, they are, because they are emotional and
Hmm.
maybe leading with their emotions, what they're desiring is to feel heard and seen and
Hmm.
understood and validated. They want their feelings to be validated. They don't necessarily want to like engage in an actual dialogue, like a more logical one. Not saying everybody that's a cancer, but in this situation that you're describing, yeah, it's like someone's leading with their emotions and they would rather you validate their emotions than
Yeah.
engage in that type of thing. And so I think like maybe one thing that would be worth saying now is, I think that a lot of us are actually like this, but we don't realize that we're like this. We all desire to have our feelings validated. But I think some people are just more like, they naturally lead more with their emotions and they're more
Mm.
accustomed to like expressing that versus others. I think that all of us can benefit from being around people who know, like when something happens to us, like
Mm.
it's upsetting, for example, if something upsetting happens to us, they know to validate our feelings. It just, maybe for some people, they want a little bit, they need a little bit more of that
Yeah.
than maybe you do. And for you, it's like, you don't need somebody to, oh, I'm so sorry, Gray. Da, da, da. You just kind of want to be like, yeah, I'm fucking pissed. And let's keep talking about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm
Yeah.
more like, all right, the damage is done. What can we
Yeah.
do? What's the action plan? And, just like
Mm,
you said, cancers, they want to be soothed like a baby.
yeah.
So, water signs should just be with water signs. Is that the answer?
Oh, that's funny. I think, yeah, well, I mean, to that point, I think explains why people that have a similar element makeup tends to like mesh
Mm,
well. Like even you
true.
and I, you know what I mean? Like dominantly in both of our charts, we are air and fire. You're Gemini and
Yeah.
Aries, and I'm Sagittarius and Aquarius, like through and through. And so it makes sense like that we just kind of get along and we can have that type of relationship where it's like, oh, yo, dude, I got to talk to you about this, and then it's just, yo, just spit it out, what is
Yeah.
it? You know what I mean? But I do think that with other people, the benefit of, for example, being friends with, say, earth signs or water signs, for me, is that it is a different energy, and so it
Hmm.
does ask me to be a little bit adaptable or to like access different parts of myself when I'm maybe around them. Like, yes, generally speaking, the friends that I have that are water signs, I do I do try to be like, to lead a little bit more with my intuition, not intuition, my emotions, sorry, and like to be a little bit better of a listener, and to not so much to the
Mm,
point where I'm stifling myself, but if I know that that's how they like what they respond to and what they need to feel comfortable, then I'll try to bring a little bit more of that type of energy to the table. Um,
mm,
so I think it's really just like more of that. Like I think that if you happen to find yourself coupled with or working with somebody who's a vastly different elemental breakup than your own, it's not necessarily that it's not going to work out. It just will require maybe some different skills, or um, an adjustment. I don't want to say adjustment like it means that someone has to change, but you know what I mean? Like an adaptability to the
Yeah.
situation at hand. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's smart to now that I know so much about astrology, knowing that they're signs, so you know
Yeah.
how to act around them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit difficult and annoying and too much energy for me to tiptoe around water signs because I have to
Yeah.
tiptoe around their emotions.
Mm, sure.
That's the only thing. So,
Got it.
yeah, I'm still trying to, you know, get around water signs,
Yeah.
especially Cancer
All
and
right.
Scorpio.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a work
Yeah.
in progress for you because you have like I said, right? Like I have a Taurus rising. So I
Mm,
think that because it's part of like my big three as well, I think that's what kind of helps me to connect with water signs, especially. I have
mm,
that, and then I have Saturn in Pisces as well. So I have one thing in a water sign, and then I have actually South Node and rising in Taurus. And so Earth and water form a sextile, which means that they get along relatively well. They're the two feminine suits of the zodiac. So I think that's why like the Taurus,
mm,
I think that's why like for me, maybe it is still workable. My mom is also a Cancer, and she definitely like is a Cancer in many, many ways. So growing up with that influence as well taught me to be, you know, more attuned to that energy, even if
mm.
I'm not water myself. Whereas you have all your big three are in like air signs and fire signs. Like there's no
Yeah.
earth, no water. Like you said, you have no earth or water really in your chart anywhere except for your south and north node. Um, so yeah, I could see how for you it's even harder for you to like actually find like you know a harmony with water signs.
Hmm.
Do you find not that this is what the episode is about, but do you find that to be true with earth signs as well, or like the
Like getting
difficulty?
along?
Yeah, or is it really mainly water signs?
Mm. Interesting enough, I don't have that many earth sign friends unless you're talking
Mm,
about their risings.
yeah,
I do get along with earth signs a little bit better than water.
sure.
But my dad's a Virgo, and
Hmm.
I've noticed that out of the Capricorn, Virgo, who
Taurus.
else?
Hmm.
Taurus. I don't have a lot of actually Taurus rising friends, but I
Only
think
yeah.
Virgos are a little bit out of like the Cancer of the earth signs for
Oh,
me.
okay.
Virgos are just judgy. They're just so
Hmm.
strict into their own little like
Hmm.
laws and rules, and that's a little bit hard.
Hmm.
But you know, waters are just so deep into emotions that's so foreign and alien for me.
Yeah,
So earth
sure.
signs are okay.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, let's talk about going to relationships with cancers. Yeah, talk about what it might be like when you first meet a cancer man or woman in relationships.
Yeah, so cancers, generally speaking, um, and it really depends on the rest of the chart, but generally speaking, they can be people who are more soft spoken. You know, they're not
Mhm.
necessarily the person that's so like kind of come up to you in the middle of the bar or something. Hey, you know, I saw you from across the room. You know, but no, but very, you know, receptive because water and feminine energy in astrology is known to be more receptive, right? So they might not be the one to initiate, but they could be open to receiving someone coming toward them, for example. But yeah, they might be more soft spoken, although they are a cardinal sign, so they could actually initiate a conversation or
Mm,
something if they feel intuitively and emotionally like, oh, I'm interested in this, or I get a good vibe from this person. They might appear to be very like the word ethereal is coming to mind, but I don't know that that's the word I'm really looking for, but kind of like dreamy, you know, like they can have a
mm,
look that's a little bit more like dreamy and like, you know, um, friendly, maybe. This is the thing, right? It depends because some cancers, um, they can appear very friendly and very warm and very open, but other cancers, like I mentioned before, they can be a little bit self-protective. So even in general, like if you're dating somebody or whatever, like you might find that they are very nurturing and very like emotionally intelligent, but they could also be kind of self-protective where they don't really reveal a lot about themselves right up front unless they feel comfortable with you. Um, and so it actually can sometimes read as like a coldness or like a, I don't want to say like a mistrust, but like they, you know, they don't, they're like Scorpio. Like they kind of can be very closed off until they feel like they can trust you and there's a bond built. And then like the dam breaks and like all of this emotion will come and this love
mm,
as well. Amazing things. Um, but yeah, so essentially what I'm trying to say is Cancer needs emotional safety and like presence to feel secure in a relationship. So if you're dating somebody and you're not able to really like be with them in that moment, especially if it's about their feelings or if they feel emotionally safe to go through these waves around you, they probably won't want to like be in a relationship with you if you can't provide that for them. Which makes sense based on like the sign, obviously. They also, because they're ruled by the moon, they can experience like a lot of emotional changes, and so that is something that I think that they look for usually in relationships, is somebody who can, like I said, be present through that, but also like who can bond with them in those moments and kind of create like a space for like shared vulnerability or like care in that moment. So like, for example, if they're like opening up to you about something, you could potentially not use that, but perceive that and whatever as an opportunity to connect more deeply and like share something about yourself. Like if they're going through a hard time and they're feeling insecure about something, it's, yeah, you can validate that, hey, I understand that you feel this way, whatever. And then maybe like it's a moment where you decide to share a story yourself, oh wow, like, I've not been through that, but I went through this thing, and like, I can relate to this feeling, and da da da. You know what I mean? Just so that they feel like, oh wow, other people feel the same things that I feel. It's not just about I'm the only one that feels emotional and I'm doing too much because I feel emotional. So that's like not to beat a dead horse, but that's kind of like one of the main things about Cancer in a relationship is they need to feel that emotional presence and like shared vulnerability. Like I mentioned before, they can in relationships at times like struggle to let go or become enmeshed with another person. And, like I mentioned, the fear of abandonment that they have, where it can lead them to staying in relationships even that are not good for them. But they just keep giving and giving and giving until eventually they can't do it anymore. They can be moody and withdrawn if they, like they're just having a bad day. I don't know, like they might not be the type of person who wants to talk about it. They might just come home and want to decompress and like self-care, and like take a bath or like eat some food or like read a book or meditate. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like they don't always, similar to Scorpio and maybe even Pisces as well, like they don't always like wear everything on their sleeve so much. They prefer to keep how they really feel to themselves, and they only really will share that with people that they feel like they can trust. And so engaging in like a superficial dialogue about how they're feeling and what happened and like gossiping about it, they might not necessarily do that with like the deeper things that they feel, so they would need to or want to be in a relationship with somebody who understands that and can see like, oh, their behavior is showing me that there's something wrong. Like, let me see if I can be there for them, but also not try to force it if they're not ready to talk about it, but I get what you mean. Like the things that you've been saying about your experience with Cancer, like it does line up relationally, you know what I mean? There's a certain amount of patience and like emotional presence and intelligence that I think is like required to really meet them there sometimes.
I mean, I went on a date with very few Cancer men,
Yeah.
but I remember the first impressions of Cancer people are just so good. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the Cancer men, especially, they're so like, oh, is there anything you need? They ask you
Yeah.
questions and they're like, so what do you think about this? There's this really warmth to Cancer men. You're like, oh, I like this guy. I don't like this, maybe how he looks or other things, but just emotionally, you feel so safe with them. Especially they have a good first impression, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've never actually dated a Cancer before.
Oh, interesting.
So, although I do think one of my past relationship partners was a Cancer rising. But
slightly different. Like if they're not a main Cancer sun sign, do you notice difference?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I think that there can be a similarity for sure. But I think sometimes people who are Cancer risings come off more like a Cancer than Cancer sun. But it depends. I'm not making that as a generalization or a general claim, but the reason for that is because, for me at least, is because the rising sign represents, sure, our social personality and like what we show the world. It also represents like how we approach the world. So like even at an early age, like we have that type of energy like built into us, and we learn how to walk around the world with like, say if you're Cancer rising, Cancer is your guide. So you get you just do like you get practice essentially doing that as well. Like every day that you're alive, that you move about the world as a Cancer, like it's kind of like, oh, this makes sense. Whereas your sun sign represents your creative expression and like shining with confidence and being yourself. But how many of us as people come onto this earth fully authentically ourselves? I would say, well, I would say that we might come onto the earth like that, but then the way that we're conditioned socially and what we learn from our family and what we learn is right or wrong, that will condition us a different way. So that's why I say, like, sometimes I think that our sun sign, we will all, pretty much all of us, like, I've never met anybody who doesn't have any characteristics of their sun sign, but I have met many people who their rising sign appears way more dominantly than their sun sign. But then I've noticed that as they grow and they come more into themselves and their own expression, that's when I start to see more of the sun sign coming out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
interesting.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Maybe there could be a difference there, but that's also just me. Somebody else can have a different opinion.
So I need your opinion because
Yeah.
I have a habit now, 100%.
Okay.
I go on dates and they tell me they're Cancer, even though I like it. It's a no for me, or Scorpio. I don't know if I'm protecting myself or that's a good tactic, like a tool. Like, I try not to put people in boxes at all. I don't care if you're any other sign.
Yeah.
But a Cancer and Scorpio is just a hard no for me.
Dude.
Like, is there something like that with you, or what do you think about this? Is this a tool I can just use, or should I not?
I think that it is a tool that you can use, but perhaps in a different way than you are using it. Now, listen, if you really find that like it doesn't work for you to date Cancers and Scorpios, then like you do you. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not in control of your life, and you have every right to do what you want. Some people might say that's limiting, but other people might be like, well, I have found success with that. So what I would say though is that if you find out that someone is a Cancer or a Scorpio, for example, it might not be the wisest thing to like write them off just because of that. Because let's say that you meet somebody that's a Cancer, but then you look at the rest of their chart and it's got like a ton of Leo and like maybe Libra or Sagittarius, then that person is actually dominantly like something you are looking for, but you might not notice that off of like the first interaction, because relationships take time to build and people's character is shown over time. It's not always displayed like right at the front, for better or for worse, because sometimes people give us a great impression and then we get to know them and we're like, holy shit, it's a no. Other times it's the opposite. They give us maybe like I don't know if I really am interested in seeing that person again, but I guess fine. And then you get to know them after a few more dates and you're like, wow, actually, I'm glad that I came to the second date because I actually really like this person. The way that I would recommend using astrology as a tool when it comes to relationships is not as an initial like yes or no based on sign, but once you know their sign, using what you know with astrology to help you relate to them in a more seamless manner. So not using it to say, oh, you're a Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, I'm good. No, but being like, oh, you're a Cancer. This is what I know about Cancers. Like, this is what I know that they value or that they appreciate, or whatever. So, how can it doesn't mean you have to do all the same things because you're not a Cancer either. But, how do I just know this information about this person and like keep that in mind when I'm talking? Maybe like the way that I would phrase something is slightly less, I don't know, slightly more emotionally, like attuned than usual. Or maybe if it's a friend of yours that's a Cancer and it's her birthday or something, or a partner, it's their birthday, you might think to yourself, oh, I know that because they're a Cancer, they might be more interested in like me giving them a sentimental gift or like some type of unique experience where we get to share it together, something more intimate, versus like, oh, let's go out to like a wild party and like get crazy and get wasted and whatever. Like they might not appreciate that and they might not feel very held by that because that's not what their interests are. So you see what I mean? Like it doesn't always have to be like you have to show up differently, but just, keeping that in mind. Like I know, for example, that like, I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart, and I do find that a lot of my friends who are also dominant in Sagittarius or have strong placements in Sagittarius, we love to like adventure and try new things. So they are the types of people, like when their birthdays are coming up and I'm like, oh, what do I want to do for their birthday? Like trying to find a unique experience to take them on, or like a cool like trip, is like totally right up the alley of Sagittarius, and they eat that up. Whereas someone who I know that's maybe like a Taurus or a Virgo or a Cancer, who might require like more planning and more structure, and they don't want to feel out of control, or they want to stay at home with their close friends, they would probably still appreciate that, but they would probably just prefer like we go, me and that other person together, like on a trip, or like they would want to be in control of like how it gets planned to make sure everything is good, or like, you know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that every Cancer is like that, but just as an example, like you can see how just knowing this knowledge about somebody can be helpful to connecting in relationships. And one last thing that I want to say about that is always to never assume anything about anybody. So even my friends that are Cancer or Sagittarius, even if I might think to myself, oh, you're a Sagittarius, so you like adventures and experiences, maybe because I know them and actually interact with them, aside from their astrology, maybe they've shared with me that they actually don't like that, you know, and they like something else, even though they're a Sag. In that case, I'm going to go off of what they personally have told me and listen to them, and not listen to the astrology saying just because you're a Sag, you like to travel or something. You know what I mean? So I want to just stick a pin in that one while I can, that definitely listen to your friends and listen to your partner, you know, listen to them and observe them and everything. Don't just assume based on astrology, but that's what I would say to that. Yeah.
No, you're right. I shouldn't be keeping somebody in a box or eliminating a date because they said they're Cancer. I remember
Right.
one date I specifically went on. I wasn't attracted to him physically, but
Yeah.
he was so attractive on the inside. And I
Oh.
found out he was a Cancer, and I was like, oh no, like I have such a bad experience with my ex who, I'm like, fudge.
Yeah.
But he was so like, at least in the first date, you don't know the person deeper, but I remember I was coughing because I was a little sick, and he was just like, can I get you anything? Like he was
Oh,
so like,
sweet.
very sweet. He walked me home to the train. Of course, a
Yeah.
lot of guys do that, but there was something about that Cancer energy that was just empowered there.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not gonna lie, I think because I had such a bad experience with my ex that
Yeah.
kind of overruled. I was like, oh no, like if I did go into a more deeper relationship with him, is he gonna act sensitive? I have to, walk around eggshells and his emotions. And,
Yeah.
I do think that that keeps me kind of guarded.
Yeah.
But at the
Sure.
same time, learning astrology with you, I realized it's hard to dismiss. But it seems true, astrology. So
Yeah.
in a way, maybe I did kind of weed out the people that I wouldn't have if I didn't know this. If I think of it in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't think there's like a right or wrong way, and like if it has still yielded some type of positive result for you and like helped you grow, then using it that way does that. You know, I
Yeah.
definitely think that our past experiences can hold a lot of weight for us as well in ways that we don't realize. Kind of like you said, like you had such a bad experience with your ex that now it's almost like colored your perception in a way that
Mm-hmm.
like you don't want anything to do with Cancers now, because you immediately, the
Mm-hmm.
trauma and the memory. Actually, speaking of Cancer and emotional memory, like the emotional memory that you have of being with a Cancer is not good. You know what I mean? It was full of like a lot of melodrama and
Mm-hmm.
manipulation. And another thing that we didn't mention, but I should touch on, is water signs have a tendency to be passive aggressive instead of overtly aggressive and like direct. They can be more passive about things, and they can use that as a way to manipulate people and to, you know, whatever. And I know that the experience that you had was really like not, it was not really the empowered expression of Cancer, like at all. So I could see how that makes you, like you said, like guarded and more wary around Cancers. And like I said, if it's helped you to kind of decide for yourself, like, yeah, I don't really think that energy works for me, then, you know, and you've had success, like, then fine. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, there was something
Yeah.
else that I was going to say.
And
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, interesting enough, the guys that I tended to like on the
Yeah.
first date, and I wanted to actually see them more, which happens rarely, all
Hmm.
happen to be fire sign sun or rising.
I was going to ask,
Yeah.
on the contrary, like, who do you find that actually does work out? So fire signs. You said fire signs?
I wouldn't say worked out because nobody has worked
Oh,
out
yeah.
yet.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
the guys that I tend to like,
Yeah. Okay.
as a woman, which is a bit more rare for me, all happen to be either Aries or Leo, like something fiery, because I just love I
Yeah.
love extroverts. I love the boldness. I love like, yeah, there's this one guy, it didn't work out, but in the first date, I really got along with him. I was like, whoa, I like this guy, to find out he was an Aries, and
Mhm.
I just got really along with bold signs.
Yeah. That makes sense. I could totally see that because you have,
Mm.
yeah, like Moon and Mars and Aries. So when you come across Aries placements, it ignites the Moon, which is your emotional compatibility, or like what you feel, what you need to feel nurtured, which is very
Mm.
different than say somebody who's like a Moon in Cancer. You know what I mean? Like Moon in Cancer feels nurtured by like home and family and comforts and da 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 all this stuff, whereas you
Mm.
feel nurtured, ironically, by something that's not like this. It's more like this, which is me
Mm-hmm.
too. I'm a moon and a fire sign, so I feel nurtured by expansion and growth and like learning and good philosophical conversations and adventure.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that type of energy ignites the moon for you, which is emotions, and then Mars, which is desire. So that actually makes a lot of sense that like fiery placements you would get along with. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I could see it working out for sure. That like you end up with somebody who's like fire or air. You know what I mean? Like one of that, definitely.
Yeah. Would you say it's true about you that if you were to look for a compatible partner, it tends to be you're attracted to Sag?
So it's funny because actually, my past relationships were with people who were either fire or air, kind
Mm.
of like kind of like me. Like my sun sign is air and my moon sign is fire. Um, so yeah, like Gemini, Libra, Leo. I've dated Gemini, Libra, Leo. Like actually been in relationships with those signs, and I've found myself attracted to all people of all signs though. Like
Mm.
that I never got into a relationship with, but like there was definitely a compatibility there. Like Capricorn is one, Pisces is another, um, Sagittarius, but I've never actually dated a Sagittarius, interestingly enough. I'm a little bit more like I don't seek it out. Like I don't necessarily look
Mm.
for that. Like I'll ask someone what their sign is, and usually, fortunately, the people that I date or that I spend time with, even if it's not like a romantic date, they generally like they're interested in astrology. Like even if they're
Mm.
not super interested, that when I tell them what they do or they ask me what do you do and how's that work, they're like, oh, what about like I'm this sign, like how does that work, like they become interested, which is really cool. And I do find that most of them, yeah, they're like fire signs or air signs, and but I've met other people who it's like they'll be like a Capricorn, and I'm like, oh, maybe not, and then the rest of their chart will be like Aries and Taurus and Leo, and I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So you have fire in the thing. So I don't go seeking it, but yeah,
That's true. We got to look
yeah,
at the entire chart. Don't judge a book by its cover.
that's
I
right.
should. I'm gonna keep that in mind
Exactly.
next time.
Yeah.
All right. I think we touched up all the points with Cancer, lovely
Yeah.
Cancer energy. So happy birthday to you guys, and let us know what you guys had thought about today's episode and leave us a comment.
Yeah.
All right, and see you guys in the next episode, which is Leo, I
Mhm.
believe. All right, well, see you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Time's been moving slowly, so we already in